Okay, I don't know if I'm going to actually post this or not, but I'm just doing a test run with the African tarot. So I asked it to tell me who Meghan Markle really truly is as a person. So, yeah. I stuck and did not want to shuffle all of a sudden. So there is an aspect of her personality and who she really is that she definitely does try to keep hidden and doesn't want others to see. Doesn't necessarily mean it has to be anything bad, especially after everything that we do know that she has been through. But it's interesting nonetheless that the cards would do that as I go to shuffle them up to see who is she really. They were shuffling perfectly before that, and I was just giving them a shuffle just to shuffle for shuffling sake. So let's see. Start It's my first time even using these. I just took them out of the box right now. Okay, the funny thing is, I know that the complaints about her, as far as when she was within the royal family, were a lot of that both her and Harry refused to take advice of, like, the handlers and advisors that were put around them. And the funny thing is that Spirit is talking about her actually having people around her as advisors who have been sort of not giving her the best advice. And now it's like, shit, what the fuck do I do? And we'll get more into that in a bit. Let's see. Okay. So something that's just coming up as I was pulling the cards, and sorry, I'm going to be a little bit slower with them since it is my first time using these, and I'm trying to figure out what the cards are supposed to, be in regards to what I'm used to them being. Um, but what was sad is, there's been a lot of like tit for tat going back and forth where it's like somebody that's in favor of Harry and Meghan writes a biography and attempts to tell their side of the story. And then here comes somebody else who's like, I'm writing a biography on William. And then they have a different side of the story. And that's the royals' way of, sort of responding. And it's like all these indirect things going back and forth. Spirit saying, we're going to see more of these books and stories coming out over the next 2 years because it has sort of become the go-to tactic for both sides to, try to clear their name or tell their sides of the story without having to implicate themselves all over again, um, and face the backlash, when they directly respond to things. So, let's see. There's definitely some things that she is worried about from the past coming back up again. Part of this, I feel like, is that bullying allegations, bullying report that the palace said that they were like looking into or whatever around the time of the Oprah interview. Um, it feels like being worried that that will suddenly like get leaked or released, or somebody is willing to maybe breach an NDA or say, well, the NDA that I signed was solely to do with my position working under Queen Elizabeth, and since she's no longer here, my NDA is no longer active or something, so I can speak out. Now, Spirit's saying that she's worried because there were some incidents where she did get into it with some employees. And this is from her perspective, Spirit is saying from her perspective, she feels like it was more of a regular, like, work sort of argument that you might have with your boss because you didn't do something that you were supposed to do. And it's like we couldn't, we were having a disagreement about whether or not a job was properly done. And so to her, it's like, did we both handle like that situation properly? No, but I don't see it as bullying. I see it as more of a normal workplace conflict type of a thing, and being scared because she knows that there were some of those incidents that happened that it was already turned into a bullying type of accusation against her in the first place. And it's like, well, if they come out and start like having people speak out, then they're going to try to turn it into more than what it actually was. And it rather than being, well, I may have talked in an angry tone of voice to somebody because they didn't do something that was asked of them. They're going to make it seem when they, speak out against this or speak about what happened, they'll try to play up, oh, well, Megan yelled at me, and this isn't how we normally do things. And this wasn't the first time. I felt like she was always coming after me, and try to paint it to have this bullying narrative to it rather than what she feels like actually happened. There's also a fear of the ex-husbands speaking out to, or somebody coming to the forefront and wanting to tell his side of that relationship, because Spirit is saying that not only did he feel like he was used, but also like, you found a better job, you found a new group of friends, you probably were out there dating new people. And the second that you thought, like, oh, I found some guy that's better than you, I got broken up with. Again, Spirit saying that would be his story and his side of things. And she's well aware that, it would be easy for people to come out and just join me. Megan's a horrible person. Let me tell you what I went through with her train. She does feel like this next year is going to be extremely difficult for both her and Harry, personally and professionally. There's also, this sense of like feeling too like this is my make or break year though. Like to I have to make this work regardless. Like I have to find that thing, that needle in the haystack, that perfect movie, that perfect project that's gonna turn everything around for us because they do feel they're being a worry not only about opportunities drying up, but also, we need those opportunities in order to continue to fund the lifestyle that we've created and that we have to keep up with because, security isn't cheap. Mansions, aren't cheap. Even if you pay for them outright, you still have to pay the property taxes and the maintenance and landscaping and fire insurances and all that other stuff. And so it's like Spirit saying from her perspective, more is going out than is coming in. Now, it feels like, in a sense, and I don't think that they're entirely aware of this, when they first came to Hollywood, obviously they were set up with Oprah, and then I've seen people say, which I will agree with, that Oprah sort of passed them over to Tyler Perry to handle. And Spirit saying, that she's got people like Ellen and Oprah and Tyler Perry around her and in her ear on top of PR people and agents and this and that. And from her perspective, it was, and this is talking about, when they first like came to Hollywood, they were getting all these opportunities, the Netflix, the Spotify, everybody in some way, shape, or form wanted to work with Harry and Meghan because they were, the new hot commodity. And this is what Hollywood does to people. It capitalizes off of them and then chews them up and spits them out when they can't squeeze any more attention, money, fame, whatever out of them. And so Spirit is saying, when they first came along, it was like everybody does want to work with us. And they were being advised by some people in ways that were probably not the best because there was a lot of encouragement to capitalize off of the victim narrative and to be super in your face with certain things. And that led to this over, I don't know what the word would be, but it was like too much of the same thing. So many people that may have even in the first place felt sympathetic towards the two of them have now, kind of gone oversaturated was the word. Have now gotten to a place where it's like, okay, but we've sort of just heard that 28 times in 32 different ways. Do you have other stories? What are you going to do with yourself now? Why are you naming your kid after the queen if you said that's such a racist organization? So it's kind of like it's led to sympathy fatigue with people, if that makes sense. Like, I don't have any more energy to keep feeling sorry for you guys. And so even the people that did support them have now come to a place where it's just like, okay, enough. And Meghan is very worried about them being able to kind of overcome that and move on and move forward. Um, and she is worried, about how much that will affect them financially going forwards because she feels like people didn't really even give us much of a chance to make the most of those opportunities because from her perspective, we went through a pandemic, so obviously there was limitations on being able to like film certain things. She feels like both Netflix and Spotify shot down so much of the stuff that they did bring to the table. And she kind of felt like, well, when we were being pushed to tell our story so much, that also painted us into a corner where then these platforms sort of expected that we were going to continue to keep dragging and trashing the family and airing out dirty laundry and secrets. And we wanted to move past that, but yet that's all that they kind of wanted from us, and everything else we tried to give them. It was, no, we don't want that. No, that's not going to work. And, then we had the writer's strikes and all that stuff. And so she feels like it's just been one setback after another that hasn't allowed them to make the most of anything that they have tried to do. So let's see where Harry's at right now. Some of the couple of questions. I just wanted to kind of play around with these real quick before I do like any kind of on-camera readings with them. Because sometimes new cards too, they just like stick together, so I wasn't sure, and you gotta kind of play around with them to get them to do that. It's not stick, these aren't doing that though, thank goodness. But just wanted to do a little test run. So like when you're in the middle of a live or recorded video, it's like, wow. If the cards start sticking together, or if you just don't like them, or whatever, for whatever reason. So, and once again, thank you, and shout out to Angela for sending me these. And I'm just doing this as a pre-recorded live too, because I didn't want to worry about waiting for anything to upload if I did end up releasing this. So let's see. This is just too funny because everybody wants to call him the Spare, and like a knight is obviously not the same thing as a king anyways. And so one of the cards that falls out is the Knight of Spears. So it's just kind of like the irony, like the Knight of Spears, but yet you're the Spare and your brother is the one that's going to be the king, and the most that you kind of could be in the context of Age of the Knight. I swear the universe has a sense of humor sometimes. There is a lot of like a sense of this like melancholy energy around Harry all of a sudden. Spirit saying he's in a place, but he's been really contemplative lately. Was this all worth it, and is it all worth it? But on both sides, So I know it's easy to assume that like, oh, that means like, is he questioning whether like everything with Meghan was worth it? But Spirit's saying that he's also thinking, was it worth it that I didn't leave the royal family when I was like 18 and should have? Maybe I should have done it sooner. Was it worth it that I stuck around all those years and still tried to make it work, only to leave anyways? Because, Harry himself has said that he always wanted to leave. There are tons of people that did work within the palace or were, royal journalists or whatever you would call them, that have said, that was something that was always spoken about behind the scenes, that like, oh, at some point, Harry is going to want to go off and do his own thing, and that they were always kind of trying to plan for that day and sort of figure out where they were going to put him. But the way that they always talked about it was still like, not that Harry is going to leave and go have his own life and choose his own destiny. It was more like, well, the palace is going to pick some appropriate place in South Africa that they feel like they'll be able to provide enough security to Harry. He'll have enough feeling and idea of freedom, but we still have that control oversight over him and his life. And it's like, here, we packaged up this new life for you to go walk into. Not we allowed you to go choose your own way, the way that you or I would have that autonomy over our lives. And so Spirit's just confirming that that's sort of how it always would have went if things went according to plan, the way that the palace expected, things to go. Because I know that Harry and Meghan talked about too in the documentary about how there was this back and forth about different places that they could have gone to and that they kept falling through for whatever reason. And Spirit saying, that's where it was. Here, what if we did this? What if we did that? What if we set you guys up with these jobs in this place? And it was just like, so still doing the same thing. We're just not in London anymore, basically. So this is, you know, but I do feel like, good or bad, Harry's in a bit of a different mindset than he was the past few years. The past few years, he was angry. He was kind of in this space where it's like, once I got out of that situation, and then, of course, having to relive his life to write his memoirs, and all that kind of stuff, it brought up all of this anger of all these things that Spirit's saying that he either repressed and never dealt with over the years, or maybe just sort of chose not to really focus on too much, that really all came up to the surface again, that made him feel like, wow, I was so unfairly treated. And my mom went through so much stuff, and that brought up all of that and kind of kept him in this space where he was ready to kind of burn it all to the ground out of anger. Now, Spirit saying time has passed. We're also in a space where since he's left, he's lost both his grandparents, as well as his dad is getting older, and his dad is now the monarch, and he's seeing that his nieces and nephews are older, and it's like they don't have a relationship with my kids. And Spirit's saying that he's in a space where the nostalgia and the melancholy are making him sad for the things that he feels like he's missing out on. He does relive the good memories of stuff that happens, and that makes him sad because it's like, are me and my brother ever gonna like laugh the way that we used to, when we would have a beer in the backyard on a weekend, where I'm never gonna get to see my grandpa do such and such thing. I'm never gonna hear grandma tell this story again. And I also feel him being extremely concerned of, what if my dad and I are not in a good space, and God forbid something happens to him and we never got to fix that relationship. And also feeling like, if their father passes before Harry is able to make amends with any of the family, he really feels like William will never ever make up with him at that point. Like, William's only ever gonna like get to that space of like being open to do that out of respect for our father, but nobody else is going to get him to be able to do that. If Charles is no longer around and William and Harry are not on speaking terms, Harry feels like they never will be ever again. He doesn't have the faith that Kate would be the one that would be able to get them back together the way that so many people sort of expect that she would be. He also, Spirit is saying, worries too, because he knows while his mom has been with him on his journey, he also feels like the aspect of him and his brother not getting along is the part that his mom wouldn't be happy with. Like, my mom would probably understand every other single part of this, but me and William not getting along, I know would break her heart. And Spirit saying that he still blames William for a lot of shit, and there is still a lot of jealousy and resentment between both of them. However, Harry also feels like because he's always been more of the emotional, sentimental one who is more like his mother versus William, who he feels like is a little more cold and aloof and logical, like Prince Philip and the Queen. He feels like I would have to be the one that's gonna make that step and amend this relationship between us because William will never be the one to do that. But Spirit's saying he doesn't know how to go about doing that because I do feel like his dad has kind of turned his back on him at the moment. Not in the sense of completely like you're disowned, screw off kind of a sense, but more in the sense of like, I don't have the time and energy and I don't want to sit down and have these conversations about where everything went wrong and who owes who an apology and all of that kind of stuff. He's more so like, you come to us, you apologize to us, you promise that you're never going to say anything about us ever again. We might let you come to one event a year and see how that goes. Whereas, Harry feels like his dad is doing exactly what Harry's problem with the family was all along. You don't know when to separate things between your public duties and your public service and being an actual family. You conflate the two so much that you're worried about the public and their, sort of response to any sort of mending of relationships and things rather than I'm your son and what would you as a father want with your relationship with your son. You're looking at it as the King of England and his public image, from Harry's point of view. So he still finds it extremely frustrating because it's like, I don't want things to get to a worse space. I do want us to try to, find a way to heal from all of this, to move forwards. However, you guys have to budge a little bit too, and they're just not in that space with him at the moment. And he's not sure that they ever will be. Oh. I mean, I hope for Charles' sake that they can get themselves to a better space before it's too late for him because Spirit's saying, if Charles got to a space where, just God forbid, 10 years from now, him and Harry are still in the same space that they're in right now, and he's gravely ill, in bed, thinking back about his life and preparing for the ends, he would have so much regret about letting other people interfere and not doing whatever it took to make the relationship with his son work. Because deep down inside, Spirit's saying that Charles really does love his boys and he is a softie, but he doesn't know how to handle conflict and he doesn't know how to handle this situation. And he has people around him who he feels rightfully so or not rightfully so, that he has to protect in this situation and feels that Harry's been unfair and unkind to them. And he understands that they have their own feelings about whether or not they want Harry around, meaning obviously Kate and Camilla and William. And so he feels torn, and because these people that are around him are in his space on a day-to-day basis, and they're much more vocal and kind of demanding about not wanting, to deal with Harry at the moment, he acquiesces to them. And Spirit saying, this is sort of the space that Charles has been in many times in his life, where he's so scared to put his foot down and say what he really wants. But then it comes at the cost of other relationships that he has. And he only ends up regretting it later on, and then usually also other people drag him for it later on. So, but the thing is, the spirit thing too, and this is what a lot of people have said over the years, that Charles just had no idea how to handle Diana, because Charles is a very emotional person, but because his parents were so, you know, stiff upper lip and very tough on him, and tried to expect him to, like, be whipped into shape so he could be the strong king someday, that he never learned how to really, like, access and communicate and work with his emotions. So Diana, who was so open with her emotions, like, scared the fuck out of him. But at the same time, it was like he also sort of admired her for it, but he didn't know how to handle it because he'd never dealt with anything like that before. And Spirit saying he sees so much of Diana and Harry in that same emotion, an emotional person energy, that it freaks him out and scares him all over again. So, let's see. And you guys, I've said this a million times before. Harry is Charles's son. If you actually go look at pictures of both Earl Spencer, Diana's brother, and Diana's father when he was younger too, and then Prince Philip when he was younger, Harry looks very much like the both of them. Also, I know everybody's always like, oh my god, he had red hair. Well, guess what? There's a shit ton of people on Charles's side of the family that have red hair, including his own dad. Everybody in Diana's side of the family had red hair to some extent. She actually had the lightest because hers was more of a strawberry blonde. And since red hair is a recessive gene, it has to come from both sides, right? So I know people try to use that as the excuse as to why supposedly Major James Hewitt is Harry's dad, even though it's been proven that Diana didn't even know him until Harry was like 2 or 3. Um, how are both of the York girls redheads then when Andrew is a brunette? And those are both his kids, right? Fergie's a redhead, but she couldn't be the only person that had the redhead genes, and both of their daughters conveniently came out redheads. It's because Prince Philip's red hair and the other people that they have in the family on both sides that are redheads, that gene was passed through both of them. So, but regardless, I channeled Diana before. She said there is no way that she would have ever have even risked having a child that was not the monarch's, because she knew, like, the scandal that would create, and that it may have, she might have been exiled with baby Harry and never seen William again. So, and there was nothing that Diana loved more than those boys. So it's like, and that's the reason why she never moved out of England after the divorce and continued to stay on the Kensington Palace grounds, is because she wanted to be around the boys and as active in their lives as she possibly could. So, she wouldn't have done anything that would have risked that. It's a convenient conspiracy. There you go. But let me grab my other deck that's better for. I have a deck that I like to solely use for, like, relationship readings. Just want to see what is their relationship, and then there will be more parts to this reading, obviously, because I wasn't really planning on doing it right now, and I do have to get up off of here and go feed the kittens and then go meet my kiddo, because he's getting out of school soon. So I just want to see what their marriage looks like right now, and then we'll end it here, and then the other ones will be on my main channel. Okay, there is some difficulties, but as of right now, they are still trying to make things work. Spirit's saying that Megan's well aware that Harry's in a space that he does want to patch things up with his family. And she's sort of conflicted about that because she also knows that they've tried their hardest to get the two of them to split up. And so she's worried that, if they do make amends, that maybe at some point they're going to try to influence Harry and convince him that she's ruined his life and to come back home. And Spirit saying there's also like some confusion too. Like, almost like she feels like this kind of happened really quickly. Like last week you were ready to like throw them all away and never speak to them again. And now all of a sudden, like you want to have relationships with everybody. And I'm confused. Um, there's a lot of arguing about money that's going on too. Like this is the thing that's funny is that I don't get that Harry's overly concerned about money. Like to him, it's just like, well, I don't really care about like having this super fancy life or trying to make it among celebrities or living like Beverly Hills. Like Spirit saying he's kind of thrown it around that he would have rather that they lived out in like Wyoming, like where Kanye like owns property. Uh, And it's like, you're the one that wanted to come here, and she's just like, yeah, but this is where I'm from. So I thought it would be easier to like move where I'm used to, especially because we had to have jobs, we had to pay bills, and Hollywood's what was offering the opportunities. So what do you expect? So there's definitely a lot of bickering and arguing that's going on amongst the two of them and not being on the same page about how they want to move forwards in every which way. Money, where they're gonna live, the family stuff. Um, but there is still love there, a lot of love from both sides. And they love the kids and they're trying to make everything work to benefit everybody. So I don't get there being this imminent separation announcement, but it doesn't mean that we won't maybe get one in the future. It's just not right now because it's like we might fight, but 2 days later we're solid and acting like newlyweds all over again. Okay, I'm just gonna ask, is there support in the future for Harry and Meghan? Thank you. This in the future, yes, but it's not going to be as soon as anybody expects or maybe is wanting, if that's the type of time that they're on. Um, I mean, honestly, it feels like they make it probably to the 10-year mark, and then that's when things sort of go their separate ways. Um, again, we're talking about what, like 5 years from now, so anything could happen between now and then. They could fix all their problems and stay together forever, or they could break up sooner. But this is based off of the energy of where they're at right now, and they just don't see them moving on from each other anytime, soon. Um, but also, don't be surprised if we don't hear a bunch of affair rumors get leaked this year because, like I said, it's kind of like this is their hate train year. There's going to be a lot of shit lobbed against them from every single direction. And I think that they really know that or are trying to kind of figure out how they're going to maneuver that one. Oh, okay. There is one question that I will ask. It could be the craziest rumor ever. It could be true. Uh, I'll ask this sometime on my backup channel because, anything that falls under health stuff is very iffy on if we will get in trouble for it. And as readers, we are not allowed to diagnose people with stuff. So pregnancy falls into that category as well. But I know that there are rumors that there are no children and that they rent kids to pretend to be theirs. And so let's see if there is any truth to that or not. So, Tommy. Harry and surely have kids. You? Okay, intuitively I'm getting a yes. Let's see what the cards say. Well, the Page of Cups fell right out, so that's a kid card, followed by the Six of Cups, so Spirit saying they do have kids. Now, were these kids born of the body, which would be a requirement to be in the British line of succession? Again, I'm getting a yes. There is something about getting some outside help, so maybe some sort of like IVF embryo type of thing. But I will say, and again, I'm trying to be careful about how I say this. Spirit is saying there is a certain genetic thing that runs through the family on Charles's side, and Harry doesn't have that genetic issue, but I do feel that his brother may have, because they're saying it's like they're not the only ones that have used help to make sure that they could have a child, because I feel like there was some stuff done with some other children that people would probably have a fucking heart attack about because they're going to be the future monarchs, to ensure that they didn't have those same genetic markers and worries that they may have certain problems in the future. And so it's like we had to go that route in order to have embryos tested and made sure that we could avoid that disaster. And so, Spirit saying as far as like Harry and Meghan go, I keep hearing something about a couple like miscarriages or blighted ovums, like, I was pregnant, but it didn't go anywhere, and then getting the help to make sure that it would work. Because Spirit saying an announcement that they made, because I know there's a lot of like craziness about the whole like Archie situation. Um, and when they announced and it being so early and then people saying that she was pregnant for too long and all of that stuff, Spirit is saying that there was some sort of a like false pregnancy test or a we thought we were and then it turned out that we weren't, but then immediately after that we actually did get pregnant, but we maybe announced too soon, and in the meantime though then we did actually get pregnant, so maybe we told people a few weeks too early and then that contributed to it, but not wanting to come out and explain things to clear that up. Also, I know that there was a lot of talk about the baby bump looking weird. Okay, this is a Hollywood trick that not a lot of people know, is that you can get something that looks like a moon bump, but it's not the full gigantic, heavy ass moon bump. It almost looks like a turtle shell or like a silicone piece that you can put over the stomach. And a lot of celebrities use this if they are going to show their belly and they don't want stretch marks to be seen or their stomach isn't perfectly round, because sometimes your stomach looks weird and lumpy into one side or the other because of the way that the baby is sitting. And you can also get ones that are like, security ones, like almost like a bulletproof vest type of a thing. And I have heard that Meghan was wearing those more the protective ones on purpose because they were so paranoid about their safety. And then that would explain why the bump was different sizes or looked odd in certain things. But Spirit saying that she was pregnant, she did have those kids. They do exist. They just don't want them to be posted everywhere. They're keeping them private for, their own reasons. So, anyways, I'll have more videos this week covering more of this stuff, and there will be a deep dive that will be only in Patreon because I definitely can't talk about that stuff over here. So anyways, guys, if you want to book your own personal private reading, psychicbellolove.com. If you want to join me on Patreon, it is patreon.com/psychicbellolove. The only place that I take requests for videos. I will talk to you guys later, and I hope you have a good one. Bye.